guys, so for today's video, I will be discussing about disaster risk. Disaster risk is a complex and multifaceted concept that encompasses the potential for loss of life, injury, property, damage, and societal disruption due to hazardous events. It is not solely a result of natural phenomena, but rather the interplay between hazards. Disaster risk has three important elements. First, exposure. Second, hazard. And third, vulnerability. First, exposure. This means coming into a contact with a disease-causing organism such as virus or bacteria. For example, being exposed to the influenza virus can lead to the flu. Second, hazard. Hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm. Example, physical hazard, slip, trip, and fall hazards, wet floors, uneven surfaces, and obstacles can cause falls. Third, vulnerability. Vulnerability communities located in areas prone to earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, or landslides are inherently more vulnerable due to their geographic exposure to these hazards. For example, a coastal community with low-lying infrastructure is highly vulnerable to storm surge and flooding during hurricanes. These following are also taken into consideration when risk factors underlying disaster are involved. First, severity of exposure, which measures those who experience disaster firsthand, which has the highest risk of developing future mental problems, followed by those in contact with the victims such as rescue workers and in cities. Second, gender and family. The family gender suffers more adverse effects. This warrants when children are present at home. Marital relationships are placed under strain. Third, age. Adults in the age range of 40 to 60 are more stressed after disaster, but in general, children exhibit more stress after disaster than adults do. And lastly, economic status of country. Evidence indicates that severe mental problems resulting from disaster are more prevalent in developing countries like the Philippines. Furthermore, it has been observed that natural disasters tend to have more adverse effects in developing countries than do man-caused disasters in developed countries. Factors which underlie disaster. Climate change. Human activities like burning fossil fuels increase greenhouse gases, altering the climate change and intensifying disaster risk by changing hazard frequency, vulnerability, and exposure. The UNFCCC defines this as human-caused atmospheric changes exceeding natural variability. Environmental degradation, such as deforestation and mangrove removal, increases the frequency and intensity of hazards like landslides and storm surge. It's both a cause and effect of disasters, reducing the environment's ability to provide essential services. Flood and landslide mitigation, due to overconsumption of natural resources. Globalized economic development increases global wealth disparity and exposes more assets in hazard-prone areas. While it poses risk, it also offers opportunities to build resilience through risk-sensitive strategies like investing in protective infrastructure, environmental management, and upgrading informal settlements. Wealth concentration in certain regions heightens hazard exposure. Poverty and inequality. Impoverished people are more likely to live in hazard-exposed areas and lack resources for risk reduction, leading to increased vulnerability. Limited access to insurance forces them to use their assets to recover from disasters, perpetuating poverty. Disasters can result in loss of life, livelihoods, displacements, and food insecurity, with the poor suffering the most, while vulnerability goes beyond poverty. Research shows that the poor are typically the most affected by disaster. Poorly planned and managed urban development. A new way of urbanization is unfolding in hazard-exposed countries, and with it, new opportunities for resilience and investment emerge. People, poverty, and disaster risk are increasingly concentrated in cities. The growing rate of urbanization and the increase in population density can lead to creation of risk, especially when the urbanization is rapid, poorly planned, and occurring in a context. Weak governance occurs in areas where public sector action fail to protect rights and provide basic services, leading to higher disaster risk, particularly in lower income countries. Disaster risk governance encompasses the arrangement societies implement to manage disaster risk, reflecting how risk is prioritized within broader social and economic contexts. Geographic location. The Philippines is highly vulnerable to natural disaster due to its geographical location. It faces threats from storms that cause flooding, mudslides, and typhoons, as well as tsunamis from offshore trenches like the Manila Trench. Additionally, the country is situated above the Ring of Fire, increasing its risk of seismic activity.